Quantum technology is moving fast, but building real impact takes more than breakthroughs. It takes the right people, the right strategy, and the right ecosystem. Welcome to Beyond the Bit Quantum Pathways. I'm Amir Rasool. Each episode I speak with founders, researchers, and operators, shaping how quantum is built, commercialized, and scaled in the real world. And if you're building teams in quantum, QAI Talent tackles this exact challenge. Welcome back to the podcast. Today's guest is Matthias Kaiser, co-founder and CEO of Machina. This is actually Matthias' second time on the show, and a lot has changed since our first conversation. Since then, he and his team have gone from bootstrapping a quantum simulation startup to securing investment from Wavepeak, Eric Hall's new fund focused on quantum applications. In this episode, we explore why pharmaceutical companies are giving quantum another look, why simulation may be one of the quantum computer's first meaningful application areas, and what it really takes to bring a quantum product into a customer workflow. We also talked about AI-assisted software development, early hiring decisions, IP strategy, wet lab validation, and the lessons Matthias has taken from building his second startup. And as you'll hear, this is not just a technical conversation. Pex Machina is working in drug discovery with a particular focus on areas like oncology, where better molecular simulation could eventually help widen therapeutic windows and support better patient outcomes. Let's get into it. Matthias, welcome back.
Thanks for having me, Amir.
Well, no, it's a second time now. It's fantastic. I think it's just been a year and a couple of months since we were last here, and quite a lot's changed. So talk me through it.
Yeah, I can give you a short tour of what happened over the past year. So yeah, I founded actually again a company. That's my second company, Pex Machina. And yeah, wandered a little bit off, still in quantum, but more focused now on application space, specifically in pharmaceutical industry. So I think we will talk a little bit about that today. And about all of the things we learned along the way. It was a pretty interesting journey, I have to say.
What is Pex Machina?
So basically what we're doing is we're coming from the idea that currently what is missing in the quantum space is our applications, right? You need something where quantum computers are really good at, where they can actually solve a problem that brings value to the customer. This is basically the main task, I think, currently of the quantum industry. I wrote about this in my articles already for a while, long before I had the idea for Pex Machina. So yeah, I just wanted to follow up on this and basically double down and do it myself. And what we're doing is basically we're applying quantum simulation in the pharmaceutical space by simulating interactions of molecules. Why this is important: every drug you take is a molecule that interacts with a group of other molecules in your body. And knowing more precisely how these interactions are happening means you can develop actually better drugs. It means, for example, widening the therapeutic window. Therapeutic window is the difference between, in the end, how much of the drug do you need that it does its purpose and how much of the drug will actually harm you. And there's somewhere a window in any drug that basically allows you to take a certain amount of the drug that helps you but doesn't harm you yet, at least that much. And that's called the therapeutic window. And every drug is basically about like optimizing the therapeutic window, getting it as wide as possible. And there are certain areas like, for example, oncology, where these windows are very narrow. Because, I mean, the risk of the illness in oncology especially is quite severe. So people, of course, are willing to take also more risk on the medication side. So usually the therapeutic windows are much more narrow. But and that doesn't have to be like this. And this is where we're working with.
What's it about drug modeling problem that made you want to go into it again, and quantum specifically?
I mean, there's two parts of it. So for me, going into this was actually coming from the quantum side, and we're always thinking, what useful thing could we do with quantum computing? Everybody's talking about it, but I was really thinking from an application, from a user perspective, from a customer perspective, like what could we do that helps somebody and really gives them an edge. And the markets you can apply to that are at the current moment, so where you have like early applications, and there are not so many. And even if you go into the markets and you look deeper into the industries, even there, the areas gets even smaller and smaller. So it was about like thinking what could be the application that really makes a difference. And we understood very fast that quantum simulation is likely the area where the first real value of quantum will be found. Nobody knows it I don't have a glass ball to look into and tell you what it will be, like a crystal ball, but we really believe that it's quantum simulation. And then the question was, could we do with quantum simulation that really makes a difference? And their pharmaceutical industry is definitely, is the answer to this, for us at least. It has high impact, not just financially, it's also high impact on humankind, right?
Yeah.
We all have illnesses, we all want a treatment, we all want to live as long and good as possible. So the pharmaceutical industry really has an impact on this. But second of all, it's also about where the technology of quantum computing fits best in. And there, I think we found a super interesting niche in a pharmaceutical industry out of many reasons, technologically, but also requirements from the pharmaceutical industry, which is probably even more important.
So you mentioned oncology. Was that kind of the market conversations got you there?
So with 3 co-founders, maybe this is a good explanation also for this, because we were basically sitting together and talking what we could do. There's Valentin Kasper. He comes from quantum many-body physics, so he has a PhD in it. Did also his postdoc in Harvard about that, specifically with a focus of using quantum computers or quantum algorithm for the simulation of quantum systems, interaction of quantum systems, of molecules, for example. And then there's Sanjoy Ray. He is a very long time in the pharmaceutical industry. I think almost 2 decades he was in the industry, and before that he was in research in the field. And we tried to fit that together, right? We tried to figure out, like, is there anything that we could bring from quantum computing that actually makes a difference in the industry? And we came very fast to the oncology space. I said before about the therapeutic window, and this is very, very important in cancer treatment. The therapeutic window is so narrow in cancer treatment, not because the pharma industry would not research the area well. They spent a lot of money, billions over billions over billions, to research the market. The problem is it's a very tricky illness to cure. So it's really, really hard to find cancer cells in the body and get rid of them, right? This is in the end what you have to do. So because it's so hard, the therapeutic window is so narrow. People accept that because the alternative to taking such a medication, for example, antibody drug conjugates, or even worse, chemotherapy. That's a traditional way of treating cancer, right? The results of this are, if you're lucky, you can battle the cancer, but to which price, right? There's severe side effects that these treatments have, and this is because of this small therapeutic window. So in our opinion, the benefit there is basically developing drugs that have wider therapeutic windows, allowing to cure cancer, but with less side effects. This is basically, that's the biggest application I can see. The big help for humankind is to basically make cancer not even existent anymore at some point. This is where we all want to go.
Yeah. My aunt passed away of pancreatic cancer. And the problem with pancreatic is by the time you find out you've got pancreatic cancer, it's too late. So then it's all realistically, she was offered chemotherapy, radiation therapy, but that was just to prolong. So ultimately it was palliative care. But from the diagnosis to her passing or moving on was 7 weeks. That window is so small, like you say, especially with that. So obviously, if you can elongate that window or into that window space, fantastic.
Yeah, and I think this is the goal. And there is a lot of research going into this, and a lot of new molecules that are coming on the market that actually are very good at targeting cancer cells, right? Because it's your body's own cells. You just have to think about this. It's not so trivial, right? It's not like a virus that you have, which you can target quite efficiently because it's so different to the rest of your body. It's actually your own cells that you try to target, and small differences in these cells that you can even detect, that you try somehow to use as a targeting mechanism for your drug. And this is very difficult. This is one of the applications where we see actually quantum simulation having a huge impact. There are others like longevity, for example, where we're also looking into, which has very similar problems, right? Longevity is caused by changes in your body with aging in specific cells. So basically, you try to find and treat the body itself, right? It's not like some outside intruder into your body. So this makes it super difficult to basically develop drugs that target this efficiently.
Fantastic. Coming back to the start, you launched with co-founders from the start, like you said, Valentin among them. How did that team come together? Did it come together right from the off?
Yeah, I mean, this was the idea. I mean, we had for a longer while already discussions with each other, trying to figure out, like, trying to understand how we could actually use quantum to help within the pharmaceutical industry. So Sanjoy has a very interesting background because he was working for a long while in the pharmaceutical industry, but he was also leading a couple of quantum POCs, proof of concepts, within Merck, MSD, US Merck, and Johnson & Johnson. So he has a lot of experience in testing quantum, but at the time they were focused a lot on optimization cases, which didn't really work out. So it's already a couple of years back. So they kind of lost interest for a couple of years. So I got introduced to Sanjoy actually from somebody that was working at the time with him on one of these quantum proof of concept projects, and we had a discussion, and you could feel that he was a little bit like interested in the technology, but he also had, like, he was reserved because of the results they had, right? So we had like long discussions, and we figured out that actually quantum simulation is a killer application for the industry. And then it made sense, right? There's Valentin, who has really like an experience on the algorithmic side to work with molecular interactions. And on the other side, you have Sanjoy, which very, very well understands the application space and the industry itself. I mean, it's not just like from a scientific perspective where he's knowledgeable, but he knows also all of the processes, decision processes, how software enters the pharmaceutical industry, and all of that. He was actually leading an innovation group at MSD and introduced in absolute record time new technology into MSD, which of course gives him a lot of knowledge about how innovation cycles and things like this are working in big pharma. So this is super, super valuable for us, which we're using heavily, of course.
You've built a company before. How's that kind of shaping how you've approached in building Pex Machina?
I mean, if you're building a startup, there is more things that you can do wrong than you can do right.
Mm-hmm.
It's unfortunately this like this, right? There's many decisions that are absolutely wrong, and there's only very few that are leading to good results. And having already had another startup made me understood some of the mistakes you can do.
Yeah.
For example, is what we, I think, a little bit missed in the first startup was like involving the customer from the very, very, very beginning, right? Not running and building something,
Yeah.
but actually interacting before even starting to build something with interacting with a customer. I mean,
Yeah.
we're doing this like since we're founded. We have a lot of interactions with customers, talk with them, find out, and really like the development has happened over the past couple of months as a software development when we actually understood how we can move forward. We had, of course, before prototypes, we had algorithms, things like this, but like the real development of the workflow, we just began when we understood how the customer is working. And this is, I think, the biggest thing that I've learned is like, customer first. You have to understand what they need, what they worry about, how their workflow is how the workflow is going, right? What they're used to, how you fit into this. And this is very, very important. And this is what we do at Pex Machina, really looking at the customer and working together with them.
I think that's fantastic because a lot of people can fall into the trap of over-engineering the product without going into market, and you kind of get trapped in your what we call your ivory tower because you're looking at it from your perspective and you're missing something that could be very obvious. That only a client can give you, and so you can reiterate at a much quicker speed.
It doesn't even need to be connected to the product, right? Your product can be perfect, can do its job perfectly, but you miss, for example, workflows that they're having, and you don't fit in that. or programs. I mean, pharma, there's so much happening. Like, right, no matter how much of the development space we're covering with our software, there will be always software before and processes before, and there will be always software and processes after. So we have to fit into that as well. And these are things that are not necessarily connected with the purely programming of that. Then there's all of the business considerations, right? Like, why people should use that, how much they're willing to pay, are they even willing to pay, who's paying for this, and why, right? This is all of these questions that you have to answer that by just programming you won't get.
Setting up, obviously, great partners, great idea, and great backgrounds. How did you launch? Were you bootstrapped initially, or are you still?
Yeah, we bootstrapped. Yeah.
Yeah.
So we bootstrapped until beginning of this year. So we started in July of last year, and we basically bootstrapped for like roughly half a year, which was tough, but also very interesting because we had really a lot of time to dig into the industry, which was super interesting, super valuable, also a lot of fun. We met
Yeah.
a lot of cool people, some of which have joined the team and the advisory board, some of which we still have very good connections to and working with.
Yeah.
So it was a really, really good half of the year. But luckily, also in that time, we found some money, which is also important because at some point we also want to pay ourselves a salary, hire
Sure.
people, pay for stuff, not out of our own pocket. So we actually get investment first by joining the Kai Ventures Acceleration Program in the beginning of the year, batch 4 of the Kai Ventures Acceleration Program in Basel. And now we have also already the first VC investor, which is a US-based investor. It's called Wavepeak. It's actually Eric Hall's new investment vehicle. So he was before working as a GP at Entrada Ventures, which many of the listeners probably know because they invested in a lot of quantum companies, like, for example, the company I was working for, Kipu Quantum. And now he started his own fund called Wavepeak with a focus on quantum applications. So we are very lucky that we fit so well in his thesis, and happy that we now have some money on the bank account that we can actually do really cool stuff with.
So I'll come back on to that in a second. But just you like doing things the hard way because obviously you bootstrapped last year. You had a baby girl last year, so you had quite a lot going on. So I just wanted to bring that to the audience's attention because I think it's fantastic.
Not just me, actually, two of us. Valentin had his daughter, his second child and first daughter, actually 2 weeks before mine.
Congratulations to him as well.
So yeah, we have some new members in the team very soon.
Fantastic, exactly. So, I mean, getting the funding in January from Kai Ventures and now, I mean, that's fantastic external validation for your concept, etc. So, having that capital, what does that now unlock for PexMachina going forward?
So this was actually an interesting thing for us, right? We were from the beginning, we thought we will have to invest a lot into platform development, but it has shifted a little bit. And what it means for us currently with having so much AI available means we can focus on something completely else, which is validation and further development of the pharmaceutical side. Because if you look at the pharmaceutical industry, it's not a software industry, right? They're driven by something completely else. You have to imagine there's people who work on medication, for example, in oncology, but also in other fields. They're actually focused on patient outcomes. They don't really care too much how they get there. I mean, to a certain degree, of course they do, but for them, it's all in the focused on the patient side. So coming in with simulation software is not a simple task. It's not like you're programming the software, showing them, they say like, oh yeah, it's the best thing ever, we take that. There's a lot of validation that comes with it, which also includes wet lab validation. You need to go in the actual wet lab and validate your simulations because nobody will believe just what comes out of the computer, which I think is understandable and which is also fine. So we will actually concentrate a lot on that. Of course, also patent strategy is important and expensive, but it's a very important field where you have to invest in. But of course, also validation, wet lab. We will run our own pipeline. We have already the first molecules that we have simulated and that soon go also in initial wet lab testing, and that costs all money. And we're very fortunate that we have now the money to do that actually, and to really get this going. I mean, it's
Fantastic.
in the end, it's just money is just fuel for startups, right?
Yeah.
The more we have, the faster we can run. Currently, we have at least a good start.
2 investors so far in less than a year. That's fantastic. I work with a lot of startups, as you well know, and one thing comes with funding comes scrutiny, especially like you mentioned with regards to IP. How early does IP strategy matter in a company like yours?
So, I mean, IP strategy is sometimes, I mean, depends on where you're coming from. I mean, if you're coming from the university, usually you think even before founding the company about IP, because somehow you have to get it from the university out into your company. So there is a lot going into that. We were different, right? We just started as 3 people being free and can do whatever we want.
Mhm.
That's a little bit the difference. We, in the beginning, of course, we're not talking too much about IP, freedom to operate, of course, things like this. But then, of course, IP becomes very fast, very important, especially in the pharmaceutical field, because the value of a pharmaceutical company is usually the patents that they hold. It's maybe a little bit different than in other industries, but their IP is super important, especially molecules. So if you're working on molecules, you should have also patents on them. And it's a very tricky and hard field. So you need also good patent lawyers. And we
Mhm.
were lucky enough to be introduced to a really good law office in the US, to an amazing person there that is the absolute specialist when it comes to patenting molecules. He worked with many big pharma companies on that, and also with very well-known startups in the biotech field.
Mhm.
So we're very lucky there because you need that. It's not straightforward to patent molecules. It's
Mhm.
really not. It's a very difficult thing. So you need people who actually know what they're doing,
Mhm.
and we're lucky enough to have them on our side. It was really cool. We had a talk with a potential investor, and she did already many biotech startups, and she worked with that law office before. And she said, like, oh, you have to talk to them. And we had a discussion, and they really like what we're doing and want to support us. So we have actually, I think, for a startup like ours, the access we have on the level we have there is not normal.
Mhm.
I believe actually we're very fortunate there. Speaking with people that really not just know it from patent perspective, but also from a technological perspective. So there are people who can actually say like, hey, that's really cool on what you're working on, but have you thought about this? And not from a patent perspective, but really from a technological biotech perspective. So this is really helpful to have people like this on your side.
For people who are listening to this and are probably thinking about a business, how has that benefited your business? What do you need to do to get into the cohort type situation? Could you talk us through that a little bit?
Yeah, I mean, what you need to get into is basically, I mean, you can apply on their homepage.
Hmm.
Even better is if you know already somebody who's part of this who can introduce you, because we introduced already for the next cohort a startup that actually made it into the cohort as well. It's of course just easier if you come with a warm introduction. But
Yeah.
of course, they go also through all of the applications on their website. This is how we got there. We applied and we got into the program. The program is on several levels. I mean, it depends on where you're coming from. Much of the beginning of the program is probably more focused towards people coming from university, which is in our case, which is not the case for us.
Hmm.
But I understand why this is very valuable, because most of the quantum startups are, of course, spinouts from university. So having that kind of part of the program is super valuable, I think. But then very fast there come like really cool mentors, very good workshops. Also for us, we learned a ton during that, met a lot of interesting and valuable people for us.
Hmm.
Working already with some of the mentors from there. For example, setting our CRM up, they helped a ton, getting that all automated, integrated with LinkedIn, stuff like this, with our email workflow. So there's a lot of things that you get from there. And of course, it's also network. I
Yeah.
mean, we met some really, really interesting people in Basel. Maybe with some of them, there will be also news in the future. Of course, Basel for us, of course, is super interesting because it's also the biotech and pharma hub in Europe. So Kai Ventures being there, of course, they have also a lot of interest from the biotech and pharma industry, which it just made double sense for us to be there.
Pharma companies have ran quantum proof of concepts before, centered on simulation now. What's shifted?
I mean, so I think there is a knowledge gap between not just between pharma and quantum, it's basically between all industries and quantum.
Yeah.
And quantum. So it's on both sides, right? There is a knowledge gap on the quantum side, understanding the industry, but there's also a knowledge gap on the industry side, understanding quantum. So at the time, of course, this is a couple of years back, what you had in hardware that was somewhat usable was D-Wave. So everybody was looking into optimization use cases because that was what was available, what everybody was talking about, what the quantum industry was pushing mainly was D-Wave, was optimization. So of course, many people looked at it. The reality is that optimization, unfortunately, there's many things you can do, but there are also amazing classical algorithms. I mean, they're the really good heuristic algorithms that do optimization. And it's really, really tough to find a use case, even if you would have quantum advantage, where you would beat meaningfully these heuristic algorithms. So there was a little bit, I think, they were promised too much and delivered too little. And what now happened is people started, of course, to look more into quantum. I think also the quantum industry is maturing, is not over-promising anymore, is really looking also at like what we can actually do, what is value for the customer. I think this has changed over the years. We're, I think, getting better in communicating that. But also from the other side, people understood, okay, now the claims are more reasonable. Let's look again into it and let's figuring out what we can do with that. And for the pharmaceutical industry, of course, the killer application has to be quantum simulation because this is what they do. Like their daily bread is to simulate molecules and to produce molecules. So it just makes sense. And there's what we see over the past, I would say like this year especially, there is a lot moving in the pharmaceutical industry, specifically also from board level and management level that push back into quantum, that do internal groups working on that do events. So there is a lot of agility, especially in the US and especially in pharmaceutical industry, because they see that we're not that far anymore from being able to use quantum computers for something useful. Right now, that's also clear, but we're not like 10 years out. We're probably more like 3, 4, 5 years out to do something really meaningful that they can use. So there is, again, sparking interest to basically be on the forefront of this. Additionally, there are a lot of problems. I talked already before about some of the problems that are really, really tough to solve, where they see that classical methods that they're having are not doing the trick. So they're basically looking for solutions to their problem. And many believe that quantum computing is us as well. I mean, it's I think for not all of the problems the pharmaceutical industry has, but there are very specific problems where quantum computing really can make a difference for the industry. And I think management starts to understand that. Definitely. It's not in, you can get with very small molecules. I mean, we're not with reasonable sized molecules that are used every day in pharma. They're getting so fast, so complicated that there's not much you can do actually with classical simulation. There's always the way of getting like less and less and less accuracy in your predictions. The issue is there that often, especially when you go into designing molecules, this lack of precision is actually leading to the fact that it's get unusable for the industry. You see that especially now that there's a move in the industry away from pure trial and error. When you look at the history of the pharmaceutical industry, it's basically you take whatever molecule from nature and you do a couple of synthetic versions of that and you test it out, and one of them will work or not, and then you have your drug. This is basically how, it's now very much simplified, but that's the basis of the pharmaceutical industry we have today. But now there is a shift towards like more of an engineering approach where you look at, I have this illness, there is this target in the body I want to treat with some kind of, I want to somehow interact with a drug. So how do I get it there? And how will I make sure that this molecule interacts as efficiently as possible with this one target and not with all of the other potential targets in the body, right? Because interacting with the wrong target, that's toxicity. That leads usually to whether heart problems, liver or kidney problems if you interact with other targets. So it's like really, really tough to get there, right? And this is where the industry basically is coming from.
Okay. So elephant in the room, we haven't mentioned AI yet. And I know you and I have talked about hiring for Pex and other companies,
Yes.
and Valentine, you said something which you said that basically your hiring strategy has changed because Valentine, who's the CTO, can effectively work the output of 5 developers using AI tools. How is AI interacting with Quantum and Pex Machina?
I think for us, it's really a game changer when it comes to software delivery because I mean, people, especially in the quantum industry, always have the belief that the algorithm is very important. Yes, it is. But on the other hand, it has to also be delivered to the customer somehow. So there's a lot of things you have to build around, which is not the work necessarily of a physicist or of a quantum algorithm developer.
Yeah.
So we thought actually that we need a ton of developers to do that because especially when you go in the pharmaceutical industry, there is a certain expectation towards the quality of the platform they're interacting with. But actually, we found out that that AI tools really make a complete difference here, right? You can actually run 5, 6, 7, 8 agents that do the work of 5, 6, 7, 8 developers and quite decent. I mean, you still need people who understand code, who can proofread it, who can improve it, definitely. But it's not. You don't need any more 8 developers to build a world-class platform. And this is pretty cool, actually. It has changed really a lot. And also in the industry, I mean, actually, we will deliver also an agentic way of our software. So there will a way of interacting with our software through LLMs because the industry actually is working already on that. So if you look at the pharma industry, most big pharma companies, they use already LLMs internally. So we will definitely integrate with that. We have to integrate into the existing workflows, and we will do that. For us, it's most important that the customer gets value. So we have to package our product in a way that it brings maximum value to our customers.
Just on that point, it might be very cool for you, but it's not very cool for me. As a recruiter,
I mean, maybe you can change into recruiting agents.
Yeah, exactly. Let's market my agents out there, my little bots.
Every job, right? I mean, for developers, I think especially for UX UI developers, there is coming a hard time. But there's things which you will never outsource, like for example, security. Also, like if you have like security systems like on your software, you have to think about like data storage and stuff like this. There's always a human task.
Yeah.
But pure UX UI and platform development, people who are not looking already into adding some skills to their skill set, they will have a very, very hard time to compete with AI.
Yeah, I mean, I can't complain. I use it thoroughly in my business. A lot of my business is research and market data and stuff which I'd have to do manually, which I used to do, is now takes so much less time. But once again, you've got to proof it to make sure it's accurate and do your own checks. But yeah, it is the way it's going. Yeah, fantastic. What was I going to say then? Yeah, I was going to talk about your advisory board. Obviously, you've expanded that quite recently as well, haven't you?
Yes. So, it basically started with Hal Stern. Basically, the backstory of Hal Stern is he's actually a former colleague of Sanjoy, our chief scientific officer, and he was one of the people responsible for the quantum POCs I was talking. So he has already experience in quantum. And he's a former chief innovation officer of Johnson & Johnson Innovative Medicine, I think it was called. It was before it was called Janssen. And he has a lot of experience first of all, in bringing innovation into the pharmaceutical industry, but second of all, also in using quantum computing in the industry. So it's a really good fit for our board. He's very helpful with a lot of advice on technological side, but also business advice, because it's not just about building a good technology, it's also making it usable for the industry and interesting for the industry. And there's a lot of things which are not necessarily connected to algorithms and software that are important, where he's amazing. The second, Ashok Khatri, he is actually running the peptide lab at Harvard Medical School, Massachusetts General Hospital, which is part of Harvard Medical School. And he has a lot of experience in making peptides. The reason why he's on our board, first of all, he's super knowledgeable when it comes to peptides, how to make them, how to make them stable, how to make them orally bioavailable. All of these things he's very knowledgeable about. He was actually also working scientifically, so academically, on GLP-1 drugs, so for example, Ozempic. So he has a lot of experience in developing peptides. And this is one of the fields that we are focusing on. So for us, it's important that the things that we are simulating, I mean, as long as they stay in the computer, well, that's nice. It might be academically beautiful, but that has no value to anybody. So somehow these molecules have to get out of the computer and into the patient. So they have to be produced, right? And because when you can simulate a molecule, that doesn't necessarily mean that you can actually produce it and that you can produce it at scale. And so we want to make sure that the things that we're doing are actually meaningful for the industry. That's why it's so important to have people like Ashok on our advisory board to help us understand what makes actually a molecule producible, how we can make sure that what our software spits out can then also make it into the lab and then hopefully also into the patient itself.
Fantastic. So as this comes out, you mentioned Eric. So this year so far, it's been a funding year. It'll be in July a milestone year. What's the rest of the year looking like for Pex Machina?
I mean, the funding year is not yet over.
Great news.
So we're still raising money. We have now our minimum reached, so we can live from that. We can also hire from that. But there's many other things that we would like to do and where we have already plans for. And with more money, we can do them earlier. So the funding year is not yet done. We're actually still raising, and we will have a push in summer, actually. We're currently working on some validation work on the product. We will release it over the next couple of weeks, and then we will actually push for further funding round. So if any of the viewers are interested, just reach out. We're happy to talk with you. We have already some people interested and in quite some discussions already with them, but we're always happy to speak with more people about funding possibilities.
Fantastic.
Additionally, I already talked a little bit about this. We will actually release a product. By now, I think it's not yet out. I hope when this podcast drops, there will be also our new webpage. Actually, what we are doing currently is two things. First of all, I talked already about making our software available as an agent for LLMs. The second part is we have actually the first workflow that is running on simulating oral bioavailability. That means passing of molecules through cell walls. That's actually quite a difficult task. So we have actually workflow that can do that, and this will be also released very soon. There will be on the website also a button where you can register as an early tester for it. So I hope when this podcast drops, I have the website ready. Just go there, pexmachina.com, and you can register as an early user, and then we will reach out and show you how the software is working.
Fantastic.
Despite this, hiring. I mean, you're the expert in this, Amir. We actually will hire at least one person this year, likely more, which will depend also how the fundraising is going.
We don't need to tell everybody else about that. So it's fine. I'm joking, but but yes, but it's all fantastic science for growth.
Sorry.
No. I'm teasing. At the end of the day, you've got to find the people that fit your niche.
We were talking about with the team about the values.
Yeah.
within the company. And out of own experience, one of the things written in our charter is now no ego, no assholes. That's important for us, right? To not find amazing people that are academically and professionally top tier, but that also are pleasant people. This is it's not always that easy. And we make sure that because we want to have a certain culture within the company that is supportive, that is positive, that is trying to help each other rather than trying to fight for positions or promotions. And to have that, you have to very, very well select who you hire. Mm-hmm. And I think we found already some cool people, but there will be need for many, many more of them.
I love the fact that you've got a charter. We've spoken many times, and you know my history of recruiting for startups and so on, and then until they can, hold the hand until they can walk alone, kind of thing. There's a phrase which I've always used: if you're going to lead, you've got to have a place to go. I actually stole that from a film, but it's true. You've got to have a vision. You've got to know where you're going. If you're going to bring people on board, they've got to understand the vision and understand the journey. It's going to be like this, backwards, forwards, all around. But the people have to be bought into it. The area that you're doing it in it's going to make such a huge difference to such a lot of people. My aunt passed away from pancreatic cancer. A friend of mine last year had esophageal cancer. He went through 30 rounds of chemo and radio. This guy's 6'3", solid guy, and he completely is like a shadow. Fortunately, he's cured and good. But everything that you're doing, if you can start getting to those parts slightly earlier, that you don't have to get through, kudos to PexMachina and everybody that's going to join you. And fantastic place to be.
I'm just happy. I mean, it's great to hear when we actually make an impact, right? And this is really what we want to do. And I think there's a lot of things that can be improved. So yeah, I'm sad to hear that you had this kind of experience in your closer surrounding. It's of course horrible, but it gives us more motivation actually to make it.
It is. But they say it's 1 in 3. So if that's the statistic, then anything that we can do for anybody, I'm not the only one. There's thousands, millions of people affected and going to be affected. So anything that you can do to alleviate that or slow down or get rid of it is brilliant. And one of the things I've always believed in is data for good, AI for good, and now quantum for good. If you're gonna use these brains and this supreme brain power and computing power that we have, let's focus on the goodness in society, giving back, moving us all forward in the right direction. One thing for founders: what do you know now that you wish you'd known at the start?
I mean, there's a lot of things. I mean, the most. Maybe some of the listeners following my Entangled Thread newsletter. I mean, I was already for a long while talking about like applications. We have to more focus on applications. We have to dig deeper in what the customer needs. Actually, even I was wrong because the rabbit hole is much deeper than I thought it would be. I mean, we started out with like basic understanding where we want to go and what is necessary to go there. Actually, it was much, much more complicated than that. And the more you understand of the industry, actually, the more you understand how little you understood in the beginning. Mm-hmm. And this is, I think, my takeaway is no matter how deep you think the rabbit hole is, if you really dig into an industry, probably that rabbit hole is even much deeper than you think in the beginning.
Thank you so much for coming on this today. I'm so pleased with what you're doing, and so much congratulations on your venture and the new round of fundraising through Eric. I'll be following Pex Machina's journey. And for those who want to follow it, where can they find you, Pex Machina, and your newsletter?
So you can find, of course, me on LinkedIn. You can also follow my Entangled Threads newsletter on LinkedIn. I hope Amir will be so nice to link that down somewhere. There's also a page of Pex Machina, LinkedIn page, but also our homepage. As I said, hopefully with the new content and design that is pexmachina.com. You will find us there as well. Yeah, and if you like, just reach out on LinkedIn. Let's get in touch. I'm happy also to discuss about quantum computing, biotech, pharma, whatever. Just reach out. Happy to help.
Fantastic. Yes, I will put all links to all of those below when we release. Matthias, it's been a pleasure as always. I look forward to our next conversation, which hopefully will be in a year's time, and we'll start having a sort of a trajectory through our podcasts as to each stage of progression for Pex and yourself.
looking forward to it.
Matthias, thank you very much. Until the next time. Bye-bye.
Thanks.
That's it for this episode of Beyond the Bit Quantum Pathways. If you found it useful, follow and subscribe wherever you listen and share it with someone working in quantum or emerging tech. And if your organisation is hiring in quantum, you can find us at QAI Talent. Thanks for listening, and I'll see you in the next episode.